Well, what's up, you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? Today we've got a great guest, Francesca Hong. She is running for governor in the almost as great as Minnesota state of Wisconsin, next door there. She is currently fighting her way through a pretty competitive primary for the Democratic nomination, and then she will be facing off whatever jar of mayonnaise that is racist enough to win the Republican primary, which I think they've got figured out here. So we're really happy to have you on. I've gotten the opportunity to hang out with you a little bit, and I appreciate you coming in. Why don't you tell people who you are, where you came from, why you're doing what you're doing?
Thanks so much for having me on, y'all. So I'm Francesca Hong, joining you from the beautiful Madison, Wisconsin, which is my hometown. My parents came here in the late 80s, and I'm a very proud daughter of Korean immigrants. And to just clarify, that is South Korea. We talked about this yesterday, didn't we? But yeah, so I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, and you know, I was supposed to go to UW-Madison and ended up dropping out to pursue a career in culinary. So I dropped out of school to become a chef, and I've been in the hospitality industry for the last 16 years. I ran for office in 2020 because that was another time of chaos and crisis, and then serve as a state representative in the state legislature. And I've been there, for the last 5 years. But I think through and through, I'm a service industry worker. I'm still bartending and still cooking. I'm a very proud single mom with my son George, and I'm a renter here in Madison, which means that a lot of the issues that Wisconsinites and folks across the country are struggling with right now. Rising costs, working multiple jobs, trying to make it an all right place for raising kids. This is why I'm running, because I want things to be better for folks like me.
Absolutely. So, when your parents immigrated from South Korea, what brought them to the United States, and specifically, Wisconsin of all places?
Well, in the 80s, there was a time of, Korea was basically under a dictatorship, and there was a lot of violence on college campuses too. And after my parents got married, they were looking for better education, better life. So my dad applied to W-Madison. I'm not quite sure how he picked that, but they came here so that my dad could pursue his studies in sociology. And then my mom is a music teacher, so she went to school at UW as well to become a music teacher.
Uh,
Well, they picked good. Whatever reason, brought them to Wisconsin. UW's pretty great school system. Many Minnesotan has, traveled to the dark side to Wisconsin for their secondary education.
well, it is nice. Minnesota, Wisconsin, I think Iowa, maybe Illinois, Canada, province just north of us, Winnipeg. You can go to college and have in-state reciprocity in any of those schools. Maybe even one or two of the Dakotas, if we recognize that those exist at all. Um, but yeah, so it is you get a lot of border hopping just across the border here between these states to go to school.
Yeah, we send, unfortunately, I think, too many to y'all when it comes to, we don't have some of the things that we need, which includes legalizing cannabis, higher minimum wages, and turns out, healthy school meals for all, where all kids get to eat in school. Those are things folks are generally for and want to live in a state that has it. So it's a big part of why I think we need folks to just speak very clearly to and see that it can be done in other states. It should be happening here in Wisconsin, and not great that Illinois, Michigan, and Minnesota is taking our tax dollars that should be going back to us when it comes to weed.
Yeah, I mean we're fine with it over here, but if you're uh so your parents came here from South Korea and they were under a dictatorship at the time. And so how are they feeling about things now? Do they feel like they picked a good place to run to flee a dictatorship?
My dad's sign at the No Kings rally was one dictatorship was enough for me. I'm not living through another one or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it did dictatorship. No, I mean we came up. I went to great public schools. My parents, my childhood home, they're still there. We moved there when I was 12 years old. Like this was not. They had opportunity here in Wisconsin, and continue to. They want there to be opportunities for my son now. And unfortunately, this isn't new. My dad's seen this before. He's like, look at what's happening with the press, look at what's happening with, they're taking away basic needs, this whole flood the zone, where they're ripping people's like healthcare away, taking food from kids. They're doing it while distracting folks and pitting us against one another, making it more about who is to blame than looking at the fact that the people who have power are doing all of this. This is, it's unfortunate, and I think but they very much feel like we can still move forward. And part of it is because someone like me is still running for office, the highest position in the state. And if we can build working class power when we need it, this is the time to do it.
Well, so it's not unfair to say that we're not being alarmist when we feel that we are heading towards authoritarianism, coming from people who actually lived under authoritarian rule. Like this is very much a parallel they feel to what they experienced back in South Korea.
Well, what they saw, I mean, state-sanctioned violence, right? The military was going onto college campuses. We weren't, this wasn't. Now we see a lot of recordings, but we're also fighting against AI. Like there is so much misinformation. Is people just, trying to survive. They're not going to be able to pay attention to the fact that people are being disappeared from the streets. So they're living through what they've seen before, and it's like we can't be complacent to it. And I think the more we continue to blame one another, the more, it basically makes them look like they're not doing everything they're already doing sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I don't know if like Stephen Miller just like read one like Wikipedia page on like the 10 things that identify as authoritarianism, and then was like, all right, we're just going to do those, or
right down the list. Like,
yeah, I can't tell if he like went on the Wikipedia page to figure out what to do, or if it just like naturally, that's just
like
what they want to do.
Stephen Miller thing to do. He's like, I want to be evil, but I'm not exactly sure how to be as evil as possible, so I'm going to Google it.
I mean, you got to have, hats off to him wanting to, master his craft of just authoritarianism,
Well, and they, I don't get why is it that authoritarians have to be so fucking insecure? Like, this is where it's like they're so soft and whiny, that they're not getting their ways when they're torturing people and making them suffer. Like, that if anybody is challenging you on it, you're coming up here, you're out here fighting with people on Twitter. Sometimes I wonder,
it's the narcissism and sociopathy, the antisocial personality disorder that you almost have to want to be an authoritarian. Like, you have to think that you are the most superior person on the planet, and you have to be very offended at anybody who does not agree with that thought process, and anybody who disagrees with you is then obviously an enemy who is out to get you. And that's really what I think. It's a personality trait that you have to have in order to like want to be an authoritarian in the first place. Because I wouldn't want to be an authority. Like, I don't want everybody answering and doing everything I tell them. That just sounds like way too much work. Like, Jesus Christ. So you got to be very, very self-absorbed to feel like you even want that position and that power in the first place. Like,
the thing, these guys are, honestly, I think sometimes they're bored, and then they have the audacity to go after working people, telling them they're not working hard enough. I don't know, I feel like it's easier maybe for them to just be a talking head, or to, when your boss is just a billionaire and you don't get any other agency, that's what they want too. It's
Mhm.
um they're
The the
yeah,
interesting thing with it though is that like Donald Trump wants to be the authoritarian figurehead, but the people who are actually running the authoritarian shit show behind the scenes are not him. He's not nearly smart enough. The man can barely, form a coherent, complete sentence, or not barely. He can't. He cannot form a complete sentence. But you've got like Steve Bannon
Mhm.
and Stephen Miller. Steves, maybe we just need to outlaw Steves from being in politics altogether. Just no Steves allowed in Washington. But we got Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, and their cabal of evil deep state, like all the things that they said the left was cooking up, this new world order of deep state cabals that were running the world, is really these groups of people behind them. And like clearly for them it's about power, but again it's like, how much power and money do you need, and is it just boredom that they get to the point where they feel that they need to be running this entire show at that level? You already have more money and power than anybody would ever like conceivably want in your entire life.
Well, maybe y'all seen Squid Game? Thinking of Korea and my people and dictatorships, like
I'm waiting for season two. Or did season two come out yet? I don't know.
Season two's out.
Season two's out. I'm just behind the ball.
I mean it's dark, but this the white Christian nationalism, the authoritarianism that's being driven by it, uh, as awful as and people, I don't want us to be nihilistic or lose faith. I still think that revolutions are happening, little ones all across the country. They're happening, little ones happening all across the state, and that means eventually one of them turns into the big rebellion. And that means, you know, when people ask, well, how you can't just talk about the system being rigged, and I was like, well, I can, but the more important part is people are feeling it. People are feeling more and more that they're getting screwed, and they're seeing it, right? There's tax breaks for the wealthiest, literally puts us trillions of dollars in debt in a country, and you're worried about debt for a country, but you're not worried about your own debt or your neighbor's debt. Or the fact that everything is getting more expensive, which means it is more expensive for everyone. Folks are pissed. Farmers are pissed. Things, when you have people who normally just want to be left the fuck alone, and now you've got a federal government, and really here in Wisconsin, a state government that have been making things worse for you and your community. There's only going to be so much parroting of who else to blame before folks recognize that it was, oh, the people in power. The people in power right now are all Republicans, and they're answering to the oligarchs. And that was made even clearer here in Wisconsin when you had Elon Musk come and try to put a fucking cheese head on and said, hey, let's party, vote for this guy. And people got tired of the flood of mailers, seeing this guy just tear it all over, the hundreds of millions of dollars that went into a state Supreme Court race. And I do think folks are starting to question, like, this isn't how it's supposed to fucking be. And now we've got 4 days before the federal government is lying and saying, oh, the well has run dry. We had $250 million for a vanity ballroom, fucking $107 billion for ICE, but we're not going to fund food share benefits here in Wisconsin or SNAP because folks don't deserve to go buy food.
And we're just going to buy all the beef in Argentina and ship that up here, I guess. $40 billion on some beef, but we can't pay out SNAP benefits.
The United States famously has, no cattle ranchers here, so
None.
gotta get
Never even
somewhere,
heard of like beef's barely even a thing, and
Yeah, I know. I mean, in
Wisconsin specifically, I mean, they don't even have cows in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
like.
But we're gonna sell them our coffee. All the coffee we grow here. That's how the tariff thing's gonna work. We're gonna sell them our coffee and buy their beef. That's how.
I don't like aluminum for cans of beer. Like we're not. Yeah, that's what we had to make sure our breweries spoke out first, our craft brewers, about how tariffs were gonna fuck up with people's beer.
Hey,
prices
I
if
mean,
there's one,
you want to get Wisconsin to change their vote, make their beer more expensive.
Well, and we did a tailgate late over when I went up to Green Bay, and how Tom Tiffany, Tariff Tom Tiffany, him voting to basically not only for the tariffs but ensure that they were remaining in place. We're going to start to fuck up with your beer and brat prices.
I do think it's interesting. We touched on this a little bit with Wisconsin, with them spending $100 million or whatever you said it was. How much did they spend on that state Supreme Court race?
115 mil.
$115 million on Wisconsin Supreme Court race, which is just asinine. But it goes to show how much focus Republicans specifically, but political power and financial power is focused on the state of Wisconsin, which seems strange, right? Like Wisconsin is most people couldn't point out Wisconsin on a map. If we're being honest, half the time they get confused on if Wisconsin and Minnesota are the same place. People think I'm from Wisconsin all the time, which is deeply offensive. And
That's because Minnesota's not on the map. Wisconsin's on the map.
um, the thing is that it's ultimately to most of the country a little Midwest flyover state as far as like major states go, population center wise. I don't think they're probably even a top 10, and yet they spend so much time and money focusing on this particular state. And obviously Wisconsin's the most purple state in the country. I don't know if a lot of people know that. It's almost a perfectly even 50-50 split of people who vote Democrat or Republican, and it's long been a swing state. But why has there been so much focus and so much big money poured into, the cheese state?
Well, I wish more of it was going to our dairy farmers so that we could make more cheese and sell more of it. So Wisconsin in 2011, gerrymandered our maps, which means that although we are a purple state where there's, as you said, about 50% of Republicans and Democrats and lots of votes in between, I guess, meant that our state legislature not only gave themselves much more power, but it became where folks no longer could pick their representatives. It was the politicians picking them because of how they drew the districts to lean more Republican or lean more Democrat. So after that happened, you saw conservatives basically use Wisconsin as like a breeding ground for authoritarian policies, going after public education, taking away union rights for public sector, making it so that public transportation, right? One of the first things that happened in 2011 with the Scott Walker regime, that was the governor that was elected after they changed the map, right, and then decided to change the maps. He basically he stopped us from having trains here in Wisconsin for transportation. And so when you have a state that continues to be gerrymandered, and then you have, folks coming back out to essentially fight, like, we won and elected Tony Evers in 2018, you became even more of a battleground state because more folks recognized that, look, we've got a Democratic governor, a Democratic attorney general, and yet the Republican legislature is keeping us from doing these things that are wildly popular, like decriminalizing cannabis and making sure our schools are funded and having, investing in public transportation. So seeing that Republican stronghold now get dismantled because we had fair maps come through, that the people organized and voted in, it's become a state where there's now, it's as goes Wisconsin, as goes the country. So if we're going to be able to flip Wisconsin fully blue here in 2026 with a blue legislature and a Democratic governor, I think that's the signal that can happen for the rest of the country.
I do find it interesting that all of these people are trying to be little mini Mussolinis, and yet they're so against the trains. How are you going to make the trains run on time if you don't build any trains? Like that should be one common denominator we can all fight for here.
So those trains, they did find a home. I believe they're running in Africa now when Scott Walker rejected the trains. But I get asked a lot about the rural and urban divide. And I think that's manufactured, and I don't think that it's, I think it's a theory we should debunk because rural communities, especially with the loss of middle manufacturing and everything that happened with more of our jobs, and profit over folks prioritizing profit and not the people, we saw the loss of middle manufacturing here in Wisconsin specifically. You saw more big ag coming in. The Republicans who are in the legislature basically just make it easier for corporations and big ag to come in, stop buying up more stuff. Rural communities, and then they basically told rural communities that the reason why things are harder in your community is because of the black and brown people live in Milwaukee and all the decisions that are made in Madison, regardless of who's in power. And I think this is where my train theory comes in, is that it is easier for folks to rule when we are more divided, right? And if we are literally being prevented from being able to see more of each other's communities, recognize that there's actually a lot more that unites us than divides us. I'm not saying trains would have kept us fully united, but I'm saying there's a reason why we don't invest in things that are broadening the public goods and having more public goods for more people in the public. It makes it so that when you put people into a more scarcity mindset and they're fighting with one another for resources, you're paying a little bit less, you're paying less attention to why you're fighting in the first place or what got you there and what got Wisconsinites here in a place where it's getting harder and harder for folks, to send their kids to a great school, to be able to afford childcare. It's because of policies that have been aimed to divide us, and folks in rural areas, over urban areas, suburban areas, regardless of where you are now, costs are rising, people are getting pissed and or they're getting screwed. And so it's now time for a different type of leadership. So there's manufacturing that divide, I think is very intentional. And when you go to rural or urban communities now, I think the biggest mistakes I see politicians making is that they go in and try to treat everyone like they're the same. There's a lot of different dramas everywhere, and you go into a rural community, I'm not going to be out here saying that I know what the people need. It has to be about actually going in and making sure that you're actively listening to their stories and what they're proud of. Because folks are really proud to live in Wisconsin, and they don't want to be told what to do. And when you've got government all up in their lives now, I think there's an opportunity to explain them why things might be the way they are right now.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, the messaging of the Democratic Party on the national basis, and just the moderate, I guess specifically the moderate Democratic messaging, I think is really probably the biggest reason why we've gotten to where we are today, where basically the lack of a progressive message of basically that, America is not hunky-dory. People are not doing great. Workers are experiencing joblessness or adequate wages, I guess, more than joblessness, and rising costs of living and all that. And that hasn't been the messaging of the Democratic Party, is certainly not of, somebody like Kamala Harris, whose, messaging was pretty bland at best. It's somebody who can speak to that. It's not going to matter if you're speaking in Milwaukee or Wausau or Green Bay. If you can tap into that, which I think is obviously what you're trying to do. I think that's the winning strategy for all Democrats.
Economics are definitely what connect us all, regardless of where you live. Poverty is poverty. If you're poor out in the country or you're poor in, the inner city, you're still poor. And the things that you can't afford to do, like you can't afford to eat and keep a roof over your head and pay for health care and send your kids to decent school and make sure that they're cared for, doesn't really change depending on if, you're surrounded by corn or concrete.
The Dems, though, the messaging is the problem, absolutely, and we should have been talking about affordability for a very long time. I do think you look at who our representation is as well. The system is not designed for there to be working class candidates who can run the types of campaigns that we need them to represent working class people. I would say elitism, folks, people are stupid. They can feel and they can hear when you are talking down to them. And we became this party of like academics and lost a lot of working class people because it's not just the message, it's the messenger. And so when you have someone who's not just talking about past lived experiences or that was then and now I'm out here doing better and I'm going to help you do that, a lot of folks don't want their politicians just out here saying, I'm gonna be helping you, right? Because there's an authenticity to working class folks telling it how it is. We haven't had a ton of working class Dems. And that happens when your party is beholden to corporate donors and honestly, like for a long time, APAC and people were answering to the money and not the money. So if we can change who our representation is, where there isn't, I didn't set out to become a politician, right? After owning a restaurant, working in the service industry, seeing what was happening to my communities, and there being opportunity, maybe somebody who was more loudmouth, foul-mouthed like me, to run for office, I was asked to. And I think it's because folks in that moment of crisis and change in 2020 and COVID were ready for different representation. And I think we're at a moment right now where both Zoran's campaign in New York, we've got a more establishment moderate campaign running for governor down in Virginia. We've got I'm paying attention to Rob Sand as well, who's running in Iowa for governor, and it's like, is this going to be the test of who is the messenger and not the message? Because you have a lot of people talking about affordability right now. I think it's the folks who aren't going to be underestimating our voters, who aren't going to be, coming in polished with this pitch. You're going to have to convince a whole lot of establishment Dems. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to do that here. But I do think we have to have that conversation about, like, who are our messengers? Y'all, like, internet influencers, amazing. People who are doing a lot of this information sharing and finally talking more about politics and that, if you don't find it, it's going to find you. And it's all over right now. But for politicians, I think what makes Zoran, AOC,
Jasmine Crockett.
Yeah, Jasmine Crockett. There's, I would say Pramila too. There is, if you're willing to be somewhat vulnerable, authentic, and make sure that you're not out here talking down to folks. If we can, I think the Dems won't have to deal with as many unforced errors if we just think a little bit about maybe we're not so elitist and we don't know it all.
It does.
Yeah, it's tough when like you've literally built your party around this, corporatism and this capitalist structure that relies upon mega donors instead of a message that actually resonates with an everyday person, because you found a strategy to win in the 90s based off that, core strategy. And you didn't need to go find rural voters because you had a couple easy W's, and now we're seeing the results of that, very flawed mindset.
So that's the other thing. You talk about the obstacles of running for office as regular working class people and how it is very difficult, not just the money aspect, but even just understanding how to get into politics, how politics works, how caucusing or primarying works, finding the people who are going to support your campaign. And Wisconsin, used to be kind of the beacon of that. Like, Wisconsin was the birthplace of progressivism in the United States. Wisconsin had a ton of just incredible leadership and progressive candidates through the turn of the century, through the progressive era of the 30s and 40s. And now that they've kind of lost it, but it's nice to see that some candidates in Wisconsin are trying to bring it back. But it's, how does somebody like you, who is a working class person who doesn't have immense resources and massive amounts of connections get into races, and especially races as big as the governor race. And obviously, you've been in the state legislature for a little while, which I'm sure has broadened your connections and horizons and been a nice step to that direction. But how do people do that?
Well, I tend to chase chaos. I think I have a very high threshold for stress, which I recommend. You build up those reserves before you run for office. I think people can do that if they're willing to be an organizer. You really give a shit and you recognize the current political conditions. And there were multiple people who, when word got out that I was thinking about running, who just straight up told me not to. And that, I think, was actually a sign for me that they might be threatened by somebody who is an organizer, who's going to mobilize people who don't turn out for primary elections. Not only am I going to expand the electorate, but there's a chance for me to get folks really excited about a candidate because I am so different. And so you have to surround yourself with a team who are going to go ride or die for you and balls to walls with you. You can't be risk averse doing this work, especially when you're coming in as an outsider. There is political strategy, and I have built those networks out, as you said, being in the state legislature for the last 5 years. But more importantly, I built out relationships with people who are doing grassroots work on the ground, whether it's in our public schools, through our nonprofit organizations. People have been volunteering for the Dems, who I've just thanked, right? And have built relationships with. So I think if you have a good understanding of how to talk to folks and you're willing to put in the work to raise some money and find a couple of folks who are in the establishment to make the establishment more uncomfortable with you, maybe kick the establishment's ass a bit, there are ways and now resources for folks who are thinking about running to run. Whether it's, I was a run for something candidate when I first ran in 2020, and I knew that there were going to be folks that I could talk to through them. A lot of this is relationship building, but finding folks who are willing to be an ambassador for the cause and not just the candidate. And the cause right now is building working class people power, and it's making sure we have fighters, brawlers, people who aren't going to be complacent or betray you just because they live into this world.
I think with the boots on the ground, door knocking, grassroots organizing, that is enough widespread across the country to overcome the lack of financial resources that progressive candidates are struggling with, obviously, and then the obstacles that it seems like establishment candidates and parties in certain places are putting in front of progressive candidates that are doing really well and getting these victories, and we see that it's not they're not being quite as embraced by the establishment party as we would hope when people do win primaries and do take that next step. Do you think that just the waves keep beating against the rock will eventually wear it away and we'll get that change, or do you think that this is going to be a never-ending process?
There's a lot of merit to keeping a strong ground game. You just have to run the ground game with it's with different strategies. And I think that it's beyond door knocking, texts and calls. Absolutely. It's who is hitting those doors, who's knocking, who's making those texts and who's calling. And I think the reason I have more faith in a ground game now than even when I did before, because I knew we'd have to be everywhere on digital, right? I'm going to do as many live streams, Twitch streams, interviews on all the socials. My digital director knows a lot more about it than me, but we are hearing folks on our campaign sign up to volunteer, and they've never signed up to volunteer on a campaign before. They haven't really gotten engaged, maybe even beyond voted. And some of these folks are, they're going to be able to have conversations about politics better because they don't talk about it, right? They're going to be able to talk about me as and the campaign as either a cause that they care about or just a person they're excited to support right now. And it's not this like polished, trained version of I'm going to read off a script and go knock on doors. Like there is, especially with everyone having a platform now, if all of our volunteers on their social media had the resources to know exactly how they're supposed to advocate for us, and they're tapping into a network of people who have not been involved in politics, especially a candidate for governor before. There's merit to having those new folks be on the doors, texting and calling, because we're not going to be training them the same way that, just the party establishment might. But fundraising is absolutely still, the biggest weapon in the game here. And so
Cash is still
it has
king.
to be. So yeah, the ground game, I think it's doing it differently with different people. I think for fundraising, it's absolutely going to have to be some of those wealthier donors coming in with the bigger checks. But I want to make sure that our donor average, and it will stay low because we have more donors on our campaign than any other campaign right now, and that's how we're able to keep the nation average low. I'm not just going at $1,000 donors. Still wild to me that they exist.
Speaking of funding, are you taking any PAC money this election cycle? Have you ever taken any PAC money for?
No corporate PAC money, no money from APAC. We, even in my assembly candidate, my previous two races, we have kept very low donation averages because I don't take corporate PAC money.
We've spoken with a couple other candidates for election in 2026, and the ones that we really like all have said that absolutely they have not, and they will not be taking any corporate PAC money whatsoever. It feels like it should just be kind of a prereq for a progressive candidate, but it's not always the case.
I have noticed. I was talking.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say I was talking to. It's that little bit of delay that makes these things just go on forever. Like, oh no, you go. No, you go. Okay. Well, I was talking to some, I'll call them party insiders for lack of a better word, about PAC money and getting money out of politics, and these people being working more inside the party have more favorable view of some of the more moderate traditional candidates than some of the more progressive ones that are running. I was like bringing up the PAC aspect of this and the corporate money aspect of this, and they go back to if the other side's taking it and you don't take it, you're fighting with one hand behind your back. I'm like, but you also can't expect the person who took PAC money to then get in office and fight to get rid of the thing that got them there. And at this point, even if they are a completely, genuine person who does take PAC money just as a means to an end, it's impossible to believe or trust that those people are going to go fight that. And I think just as optics, no matter what, it has to be something that candidates are refusing to take, because we're never going to get it changed until candidates start winning without that corporate PAC money.
Yeah, and some folks, there's still PAC money that comes from like unions and lobbies that aren't corporate lobbyists, right? They're not corporate PACs. It's not there's corporate money coming into this race already. And I think viability and electability, those metrics right now in if a candidate is going to win or not are very, they're long-standing. And you're not going to win races without fundraising. But there's more folks they know that all your politicians are going to be beholden to money and not the people. Like that doesn't change unless you have people who are willing to call it out.
I do think too.
That the Dems struggle.
Yeah. I do think too that like the value of money in political campaigns is less than what it used to be, because we have been seeing, like the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, where they can dump $115 million on a race and have a person who controls an entire social media platform, simping for their chosen candidate and lose by large margins. And so I do think that there's reason to believe that the value of a dollar is higher or lower based on where that dollar comes from in politics today than the actual value of the dollar itself. And the biggest fundraiser isn't necessarily edging out there are going to be the winning candidate simply because they've raised the most money or they have the most money behind them. I think that people are starting to get frustrated with that level of money in politics and looking for it. Do you think it's getting to the point where people taking gigantic amounts of money like that is almost doing more harm than good for some candidates who are trying to win these races?
I think it will if it gets out. I mean, folks are making political calculations, like, based on if this is something that they, like, how much are you weighing that shame? I think it's what sort of campaigns and where you're running matters, right? Like, there are going to be some places where nobody gives a shit who you took that money from because they just want it to be a Democrat and maybe there's just one that's running against a Republican. I think for folks, and like that varies by demographics as well. We've got younger voters, people who are more online. I think too are seeing that research and seeing where some of that money goes. I mean, there's this backlash against like AIPAC right now. That was driven a lot by, I mean, it's been driven by many things that are going on, including the genocide, but so the fact that I'm getting asked that question about corporate PAC and AIPAC money means that things are starting to shift and folks recognize that having the right answer to that is going to serve you as opposed to not answering it.
I agree. I do. It does make me hopeful that we are turning some pages in making real political change. Hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years, when it comes to corporate finance specifically, because of the way that voters are responding to all of that massive money coming in.
Yeah, I mean, Citizens United is like the most unpopular thing for Democrats and Republicans. I think that's basically one biggest thing that people can agree on.
Turns out buying politicians is not sexy, even though they're trying to make it that. Especially when just people hear the amounts. Like, it's billions of dollars, and it's an industry in itself. We don't talk about just the folks who are making money off of politics, who aren't candidates, right? Who don't work in government, who don't even work in the campaign sometimes, but the folks who are that consulting class. There are some really great ones, but there's a lot of money being made on telling folks that they can run for office, fully knowing that those folks can't win, but it's the business, so you do what you can to make money off of it. It's the whole system that definitely needs an overhaul, and it's fucked. But there's a lot of people who know that needs to be unfucked.
I mean, and this is something that's system wide. This is a problem that is endemic, or not endemic to just one party. Like Democrats and Republicans both suffer from this on an immense scale. So getting into your campaign a little bit, what are your platforms that you are running on to work for the people of Wisconsin? What do you think is going to get you into that seat? What are your policies?
Well, incrementalism is irresponsible, but I say a lot. We've got really big, complicated problems right now that are going to require practical but very progressive action, and that means universal policies, universal childcare, universal healthcare, ensuring that we are fully funding our public schools, increasing our minimum wage. We're still at $7.25 here in Wisconsin. We've got a 20 for 26 pledge that's going on. And then we're an aging state here in Wisconsin. We're hearing a lot about birth rates and people not having kids, like that is absolutely a reality. And the folks who are navigating that are caregivers, whether that's elder care, at-home health care, mental health care workers. Some of these folks are making less than what you make at a quick trip in Wisconsin. And so making sure that folks have what they need to take care of themselves and their communities, because it's about giving people freedom to make the choices that they need to do that, because especially with rising costs, we're in a time where folks shouldn't have to worry about whether or not they're going to make it with their paycheck, or if they have to go into work sick. It's also why we're pushing for universal pay.
And getting that stuff done as governor sounds all great and fine and dandy, but we were talking the other day about Tony Evers, and he's essentially been a lame duck governor for the majority of his tenure because he hasn't had support in the legislature. And obviously, there's a few levers of power that the government has with veto power and things like that they can get a few things done, even if they don't have that support. But coming in with these really massive progressive policies, the Taylor and I definitely support and have been advocating for these things for ages. So I don't want you to take this the wrong way, because we would love to see it nationwide. But getting that kind of stuff done when even moderate Democrats are not necessarily going to be on board with jumping the minimum wage up to $20, or going all in on universal health care or free childcare, like, you got a lot of "how are we going to pay for it" Democrats out there too, and a lot of I'm too worried about my purpley district not reelecting me if I go too communist or too socialist. So it would almost seem like even if you were able to win the seat and were able to get at least some support in the legislature, party-wise, it would be tough to get a lot of these passed. And do you have a plan to try to move the needle on these things if you do get there?
First, I ask folks, like, how do you think we got here? It costs too much not to make these changes, especially in a moment right now where we are living through fascism. And so the urgency in meeting this moment requires bold policies and progressive policies. We also have to deliver. I get that. A lot of these politicians, though, if they're interested in being reelected and they've got a purplish district, turns out if you deliver for what a lot of your communities need, and they know you were in office when those changes passed, it's likely that they're going to want to vote for you because there was a material condition that changed in their lives and it improved their lives. And so the phasing of things might be not, it might be for small business owners and increasing the minimum wage. We have a different phasing system for when the larger corporations who are in business in Wisconsin have to implement a higher minimum wage. But we are writing our values into law, and our values are that people should have their basic needs met. And so we're starting the negotiations. Like, I've been in the legislature. I understand negotiations and compromises are going to happen, but we need to have an executive that goes in and sets the standard. Like, this is the bar. We are going to make sure that everyone has a living wage. We're going to make sure everyone has access to good, cheaper, high quality healthcare. We're going to make sure every kid can go to a great public school where their teachers aren't having to buy school supplies for their classrooms themselves out of their salaries. But you have to start the negotiations there and make sure that through a budget process or through a legislative process, you are working on making sure these policies can come into play during your tenure there. And so it's going to require making some folks uncomfortable, but normally a lot of people are for fair taxation. So when you have small business owners like I was paying the same tax rate as some of the larger mega corporations, we're going to be able to build up revenues to pay for some of these things. But we also know that they haven't been done before because they haven't been priorities. You make them a priorities, you change and make sure you have enough ways to increase revenues. And you look at, the fact that the folks who have been getting away with, are polluters who don't have to pay their fines. The people who can go in and start bringing in AI data centers and not pay for utilities, you make it a more fair fair taxes when you tax the folks who are supposed to be paying their fair share. You make sure that mega corporations with loopholes and how that they can how they can get away with making more money without paying for their taxes or utilities. I mean, this is about reorganizing how you finance your policies and your priorities. And if politicians, if they want to be reelected, they're going to have to deliver for folks, and that requires having legislation that's actually going to do that as quickly as we need it to be done.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Taylor.
And I presume that, obviously if you do, earn the seats, then you essentially have said to the Democratic Party in Wisconsin that, your progressive policies, these are the winds of change, and you should align your sails or park your boat and let somebody else get on the waters, because, this is your shot and this is where we're going to start from. We may not end, at the exact spot where I think we should be going, but I think the governor has a lot of opportunity to set the stage for the state, with communications and, showing polling data that shows the overwhelming popularity of most of these policies, if not every single policy. I don't know. I think if you can win the governorship with those policies as your main stage, then that, that gives hopefully the Democrats and other people that are looking to run for office in those purple districts, if the Democrats that are there, they're not willing to make those changes to what they're voting for, hopefully the voters will make the change for them, and you can build a coalition there.
You couldn't fill it or end that one out with one more sailing reference there. Come on, man, you had to close it out with another sailing reference. Like that was a lot of water reference.
I'm not you, okay? I just got the metaphor rolling. I don't flush it out all the way.
You gotta finish it all the way. Yeah, man, you gotta see it through. It's work ethic.
I know. I'm just being lazy right now.
So your time in the legislature, and I absolutely agree with Taylor, and I hope that people see it that way. I've just been let down by the Democrats and the Democratic Party often not seeing things that should be blatantly obvious about accepting more progressive policies and the winds of change. It seems like they fight against it. Like losing to Donald Trump the first time should have been like, okay, clearly we need to shake some shit up here. Like this needs a top-down revamp of how we're running this shit show. And then they're like, no, we should go try the same thing again that we did the last time, and it didn't.
They're like, yeah, let's roll out Joe Biden. There's some change right there, right? That'll fix everything.
So, like, I hope that they would do that. I don't have a lot of faith that they will see it that way. But
I mean, that's the national party versus state party, so
yeah. There's the general, like, now I'm thinking about sailing too now, and I think young people are ready to make some waves, and they are very good communicators, and I think that there are folks who work within the party. I'm talking about staffers and people who, you're not seeing how many young folks are working behind the scenes here, at least for us in Wisconsin. There have been some amazing campaign staffers and folks who are very much wanting for this to happen and haven't had an opportunity, right, to like push on their own party, because that's like it's their boss. Like you might not always be able to say what you want to say when you're working for the party versus like where you're at as like in your political position. And so I think this is like, think of it as a trendsetter, right? We have to be, progressives have to be trendsetters. Like democratic socialism is cool again. We have to make sure that we are riding all of these waves and making sure that more folks, understand that we are the party that's going to lift all boats. I am staying cautiously optimistic and even nauseously optimistic for like those of us who get seasick here, that there is a multi-generational coalition that is growing, that's going to make it so that we have like sustained generational power for working class people. It's happening all across the country. and they don't want us to think that it is. And I really do think that there are folks who don't know that they are political organizers right now, that are coming out to take care of their neighbors. And we've got, here in Wisconsin, 700,000 folks are going to be losing their food share benefits. And I'm seeing on my feeds, and I hope that people, whether it's Vernon County or Dane County here, people are taking care of their neighbors. We've got more folks organizing food drives. We've got more people talking about political issues. You have people coming out understanding the power of like, oh, this is how shit gets done when my community comes out and organizes something and we're able to relate. I mean, GoFundMe is like the medical debt payout site, right? Folks know the system is not doing what the system is fucked, but we have ways and we're showing each other ways that we can make change. The party will get there, and I think it's an inside and outside strategy. You gotta have folks like me who have seen a little bit of the sausage making, working with a lot more people who are ready to make change to help keep me accountable too for the things that I'm talking about. And so there's opportunity here, and I think folks who are part of the establishment themselves are ready for an out. They're ready to jump ship.
There we go.
Oh,
See,
no.
this is why they
You
pay
thought
you the
you
big
could
bucks,
keep a
Taylor.
You thought you could keep a metaphor going?
No.
Man,
I don't know what
you
I've
really
done.
docked that boat at the end there, Taylor. You see, like you should have done.
Congratulations on that. I tip my hat to you, metaphorically. No, I think this is the moment for an inside-out change in the Democratic Party, if there ever was one. I mean, there literally hasn't been an opportunity for a shift like this since World War I, Great Depression, World War II. We are, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective and how things kind of turn out here in the short term, seeing a massive disruption, and we have to try at least, right, to take the reins and steer that
Raise
ship.
the jib. Come on, take the reins. You don't steer a ship with reins, Taylor. Who let you on this show?
I thought you were gonna go
Yeah,
into like
horse-
horseback riding or something. I was like, is there a carriage? Are we carrying something now?
Yeah, I was really trying to like think of something and also avoid it, so I just went with something that made zero sense. So
there are more of us. There are a lot more working class people. There's the people who are often loud, and the most foul just have bigger megaphones. We just gotta grow ours.
Well, so as we wrap this up we've got working class people, and you have been a working class person who has had a little bit of hands-on experience in government now. Have you set any trends? Have you passed any legislation you're really proud of? What's your resume on there that you're touting as to why, you've done this and made this shit happen in the legislature, and you can bring that up to the governor's mansion?
I passed a bipartisan bill on race in Wisconsin, believe it or not.
Really?
The Asian American Education Bill would require K-12 public schools to include Asian American history, specifically Hmong history. After Minnesota, we've got the third largest Hmong population in the country. That was bipartisan, Republican-led. I knew it probably wasn't going to move if I had my name on there first. And yeah, after years of it being introduced since like 2017, Governor Evers signed it into law last year. So it is possible to have the conversations that we focus on our kids and pass a bill, even if it may have required me listening to some really, my colleagues saying some really horrible xenophobic shit. But we got it done. And I think one of my proudest moments is when people tell me that they didn't know what a state representative did. They live in Madison, but they may not have been tuned in all the time to what the state legislature does. And they started paying more attention after, someone like me who had a different type of background got one of my first articles that came out after I won my election was that I called the Tavern League beer cunts. You get folks to, pay attention for a moment. You have a moment to just at least share. These things can be different. This is different. So yeah, when I can make government more accessible, literally by having someone else learn more about it, and I'm able to make, I don't know, a little less racist for the day by doing something for our kids. Those are accomplishments.
Those are huge accomplishments. Will you continue to call people cunts from the governor's mansion? Because I would love to see that.
So I've had Cuntgate 1.0 and 2.0 now, so maybe it is time for 3.0. During the spring election and in this last April, I said, C for Crawford, U for Underly, who was our state superintendent that we needed to elect, N for no on a ballot referenda, and then T for Tuesday. And I can tell you that there were multiple folks who went into vote and could not remember who they were supposed to vote for superintendent, or whether or not they were supposed to vote yes or no on the ballot initiative. They remembered cunt. So they went Crawford, Underly, no. Tuesday.
That is, I think we need to start using acronyms, curse word acronyms for all forms of democracy. This is the way we take our country back right there. Just cunt everywhere, you know?
You thought we had a messaging problem? Bruh.
We've
Just
solved
found the
it today.
messaging solution.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Cunty, you know? Crawford, Underly, no. Tuesday, you. Just, yeah.
Yep. I think you need to
I
start.
hope mine's not fuck. I feel like that is possible since it's Fran.
Fran, yeah.
But
Yeah,
we'll
Fran, Underly.
workshop it.
Do you know who you'd want? Wisconsin, they run on the governor's ticket. The lieutenant governor runs on the same ticket, right? They're not independently elected. Do you have any idea who you would want to run beside you should you win the primary?
Oh, well, we only have one Democratic. We've got a great candidate right now for Lieutenant Governor, Sarah Godlewski. I believe there was a Republican who may have gotten in the race, but yeah, so whoever wins that primary will run on the ticket.
So you don't get to pick who your lieutenant governor would be then. Okay.
Yeah.
But then you're elected together after. So they run their primary, so they win their own primary and then you run together as. Okay, that's interesting. I don't mind that. See, yeah, you need somebody with a U in their name though. That's you can start working on the fuck acronym right there.
Yeah, there's not not much going on there.
Yeah, we might have to find a different one. Yeah, I'm sure we'll figure it out. It might even just
we'll
be
work.
Whistle.
Yeah, once you get to that point, hit me back up. I want to help brainstorm on the messaging campaign for this. So,
Jordan's pretty good at swearing, so I'm sure he can help you out for sure.
We're kindred potty mouse here. Well, I'm not so kindred. You're being kindred a little bit more now. They keep telling you you're not supposed to swear so much. You got your post-it notes up there and everything for radio shows.
I mean, we don't want, but I don't know. Is it like RFC fine still a thing? Who knows? But they're not thrilled when I do it on the radio.
No. I mean, if the president can do it and say all the shit that he says on the radio and TV and everywhere else, I feel like all of us should be held to a slightly lower bar, which would be a very low bar. So, no, this has been great. I really appreciate the fact that you are getting in the race and running and putting yourself out there. People tell me I should run for office all the time, and I'm like, have you seen how shitty of a job it seems like to run for office? I don't want to do that. That sounds awful, absolutely horrible. So I have a ton of respect for the people who are willing to do it, especially for the right reasons and not for all that sweet, sweet corporate APAC money. So I really do appreciate the fact that you're doing this. And I want to give you a chance to give all the shameless self-promotion you got going on here. How can people volunteer for your campaign? How can they donate? How can they support to make Wisconsin the progressive bastion it once was once again?
Make Wisconsin progressive again. Folks, you can join me at francescahong.com, www.francescahong.com. You can donate, volunteer, even send us an email through there. We're on all of the social media platforms, I believe, at Francesca Hong WI. I am most active on the, I'm a millennial, so I'll be on Instagram a whole lot. And then you want to go to Twitter for my hot takes during Brewers, Bucks, and Packers games. If I can
Yeah,
live
she's a big
tweet
football
my
fan over
thoughts,
here.
yeah.
Got her favorite socialist football team over there in Wisconsin.
You know what? We're here for small market teams, always. I'm an underdog, I'm an outsider, and I'm rooting for the underdog. And, that's what you gotta do for small market
So
teams.
then you should be a Vikings fan, because we are always losing.
Yeah, underdog and loser is different.
Well, we'll see who's the real loser.
You need like a, but yes, Francesca Hong, WI for social media, and francescahong.com to learn more about our campaign.
Absolutely. Please, everybody, go follow her campaign, support her, share her stuff. We need more progressive people running like this. We just need to get them platformed and get their messages out there. Win, lose, or otherwise, it moves the needle when these messages make it to a broader audience, and that's really, really important. So everything that happens here in your campaign is important work, regardless of what happens. And we really are appreciative that you allow us to be a part of it here. That you give us a little bit of your time. We look forward to working with you more as time goes on. Maybe doing some meet and greets and border wars as you move up and down the St. Croix River Valley over there. We would definitely love to help you get you in that seat. For everybody else watching and listening, we appreciate the hell out of the fact that you give us this platform to have awesome people like Francesca on. And we've been doing this now for a couple of years, and it's just crazy to think that you all are not tired of us and told us to shut up yet. So we appreciate it. If you like and share and follow everything, that obviously helps keep us doing this. And if you want to support financially, you can do that by subscribing or becoming a member on YouTube, Patreon, all the places you can give normal people like us money. You can go do that there too. So we appreciate that. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much for being here, Fran.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, y'all.